Hey guys, well, welcome to the Known Experience. John and I are excited to launch this new project for the new year and hopefully beyond. It's been something that we've been working on for about the past year, and it's just a continuation of our friendship. So, John, I'm excited to kick this off with you, this project. And me and John have just really great conversations. So we've been kicking around a podcast for a while, but John's a little bit more calculated than I am in the podcast front, right? A little bit more discerning. And I think
by saying we've been working on it for the last year, what Sean really means is he's been waiting for me to be willing to do a podcast for the last year.
You know, but the funny part is we went probably through about 3 different ideas of what we wanted to do. And he called me one day in, I want to say early December, and said, hey, I don't know why we haven't done this, right? Because we had led some of these trips called the Known Experience, just with guys about the journey of what it is to be known and know others and live curious lives and how difficult that is. As a man, I have a coffee brand that I labeled Known that we'll kind of talk about. And it was one of those where it's right in front of your face the whole time, and you're like, how did it take us this long?
It was really kind of a duh moment, but some other show will go through the 25 different names for podcasts and ideas that we had prior to this one. But I want to start with how we met. And, you know, for some folks may know you, some folks may know me, and some folks don't know either of us. So why don't we talk about how we met, who we are, and why we chose to do the Known Experience podcast.
Yeah. I mean, we've known each other for, I always mess this up, 13 years now, maybe.
Yeah, 13, 15, somewhere around there.
Yeah, he walked into one of my first coffee shops and ordered a Coco Mocha Loco. I don't know that. It was a blended coffee drink.
It was what you would make for a 12-year-old girl.
Yeah, I mean, it was a Starbucks drink, but it was all right. But John, you know, it was funny. He's, you know, I think there are a few people in life. You know, I'm an intuition guy. I'm a gut guy. And if you're an extrovert, you can kind of connect with a lot of people, but you also know they're not going to be close friends. I don't know if that makes sense. If at least I can pretty quickly. I kind of make the decision. But John was one of those guys. I actually didn't know him that well for probably the first 6 months, but he kept coming in, and we've been buddies, and our relationship has grown ever since. I think really probably the catalyst in our deepening of it was he invited me we both longboarded, and we were skating the streets of West Palm Beach with a couple guys, middle-aged guys skating. I mean, it was great, but it was a great night, right? We were just running around the street that we all called home, and that really launched our friendship. And so
we were middle-aged men longboarding the mean streets of Palm Beach, and nothing could be more privileged or irrelevant to culture. But we had a good time, and I think I retired after cracking a rib longboarding a parking garage. I think there were police involved, actually, if I remember correctly. But, you know, I recognize the same thing, Sean, when I met you, and you were running a small coffee shop in a glass sculpture gallery.
Yeah.
Shout out to your brother, Habitat Galleries. But I think, you know, when you're busy, you have a limited amount of time in your life for friendships. You kind of tend to recognize people that you think, okay, I want to make space in my life for that friendship, because I need that. And that's what I sensed from you. So I'm grateful we've stuck with it. And I will say this, we've both learned this in the last few years. When we move from somewhere, it is always surprising who you maintain a friendship with, who reaches out to you. I've had people that I really wasn't that close with before I moved that continue to reach out to me, and we have way more of a friendship now than we did when we lived in the same city. And then there's people that I talked to all the time when I was there that I never hear from today. So it's interesting what happens when you move. But you moved and
Mm.
you moved to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and you started another coffee shop called, and you chose to call it Known Coffee. There's a
Yeah.
little
Yeah. Yeah.
endorsement here.
Yes,
And
sir.
why did you choose that name? Your previous shop had been called Subculture, but
Yep.
you wanted to name this one Known. What went through that thought process?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it's the coffee world. Before that I was a musician, and nothing felt like home like coffee shops. And I just wanted to create a space. I never wanted to do something I hated, right? I didn't want to grow up and lose all hopes and dreams and dread going to work. And coffee provided this space for myself and others, um, of all backgrounds, right? There's nothing like a space that has artists and teachers and businessmen and that come in on a regular basis, right? And so when I'd opened my first shop after never serving a coffee or worked in one before, I don't advise you start a business that you know nothing about, but that's what I chose to do. um, but I quickly found out that when you listen to someone's story and continue it daily, right? You don't just stick on the, hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? Which shows kind of an inauthentic greeting, right? But I decided that I wanted to focus on knowing them, really who they were. And maybe, if I'm honest, it was out of protection of my ego. And I think maybe this is the first time John's ever heard this, but I didn't want them to judge me or look down on me. So I was like, I'm not going to ask them what they do, because what they do is probably better than what I'm doing. And so I'm going to feel like less. So I'm just going to ask them about who they are, and I hope they do the same to me. And that was profound, right? And it's accurate. So known has always been, knowing my customers, knowing their story, showing them care has always been why I do coffee. And so the known experience trips, known experience podcasts, known coffee. It's now that I'm in this new stage of life where I'm kind of blazing my own trail, that it felt very much in line with what I want from life and what I want others to feel in life. So.
Yeah, and you had invited me on some trips. You'd done some men's trips in the past, and you said, I want to do something new around this idea of known.
Yeah.
And, we were kind of figuring out what's that look like? What do we want these to be like? And we didn't want it to be some male, like primal paleo, misogynistic,
tougher, stronger, faster.
Yeah. Didn't want to necessarily go out in the woods and paint our faces and kill animals and rub blood on ourselves. But we did want to do something that's, men enjoy: adventure, hiking, fishing, all of that good stuff. But at the same time, really tap into this idea of knowing ourselves, discovering ourselves, knowing each other, being vulnerable with each other, and growing together through that, providing a space for that for men. And I think when we were doing that, we're figuring it out as we go. We still are. But in our second trip, there was another one of those moments, like aha moments for me, as to why we do this, and just realizing that men in general, we don't make great friends. We don't make great friends to each other. We don't make great friends to our partners. And a lot of it is this unwillingness to know ourselves, to be known, and to be curious about the lives of others. And so we really, in the Known podcast, those are three things we want to explore. We want to explore knowing ourselves more, understanding ourselves, owning ourselves, being humble enough to acknowledge who we are and who we aren't, what our strengths and weaknesses are, what our failures are, our successes, and then to be willing to share all of those things with others, be vulnerable. And then lastly, to be curious about others, to ask questions, to be interested in their lives, to be useful to others.
Mm.
And so that was a real kind of aha moment for me. I think part of it for me also was realizing it's such a cliche thing, but it's so true, is that, you know, if you want a good friend, be a good friend. And I think for too long, I've put demands on other people, whether it be family members or partners or friends, of who they are not showing up for me as, and really turning that around on, you know, why don't I give what I hope to receive and see how that works out? And it turns out it works a lot better. I've
Right,
noticed.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the other piece of this that we want to achieve is, you know, with men, we tend to wait until crisis happens, right, before we are known to others or care to be known, or we hit the state of you know, I almost call it like a disassociative midlife, right, where we're like, well, this is who I am, super compartmental. It's almost a state of hypocrisy, right? But we know it, but it's just life, right? And it's just how you do life. And so for me, that's what part of this knowing piece is, like, how can we incorporate this in process, not in times of crisis or in times of
Mm-hmm.
compartmentalization where it manifests in unhealthy ways, right? There are loads of people that wait until that point, but you know, in discovering this in the uncomfortable ways, it's just, I think it's going to be really beneficial. I mean, it's beneficial for us. You know, we're doing this selfishly, right? We both realized how important it was in our own lives, and realized, hey, yeah, we should probably be addressing this
Mm-hmm.
and working on this. And I'm sure there's other guys just like us. So
I think so. I think what you just said is really important, though, is that we often do finally open up when it's a time of crisis, you know, whether it's we need help from a friend or the relationship is falling apart, the marriage is falling apart. We finally get honest. And you can't build a friendship in a time of crisis. You know, you can, it may grow through that,
right.
but it's not something you can cram into a short period of time, like history and trust and all of that. Like, you can cram for a test, you can stay up all night putting together a slide deck for the presentation, but you can't cram 4 years of friendship into one weekend or into one day. And so we want to encourage people through this to start investing in the relationships around you more, building that time, getting those reps, as we would say. There was an article I read recently. It was pretty fascinating about friendship, and the source of it was really unusual. It was about how they are now trying to engineer friendship into online games in order for people that play those games to build friendships deeper around the game, so they play the game more.
Right.
And in doing so, they did some research on friendship, and I found it really helpful. And just for the definition of friendship, is a single social bond between two people. It's pretty basic. But they identified 4 key ingredients to developing a meaningful friendship. One is proximity. You got to be close to each other, either physically or virtually, like this. 2 is the similarities between each other help. 3 is reciprocity, and that just means both of you engaging in back and forth, both of you giving and receiving information, ideas, concern, care. And then lastly is disclosure, and that's vulnerability. It says at higher levels of friendship, there needs to be an opportunity for safe, consensual, intimate sharing of weaknesses and ideas.
Ooh, and that just hits guys so badly.
We're like, I'm good with all that other stuff,
Right.
but that last one,
Yeah, and it doesn't work without the last one, right?
it doesn't. It
I mean,
doesn't.
it
It takes
short
all 4 of
circuits.
these.
Right.
So they identify actually hours put in to friendships and how cumulative hours, compounding hours, take us deeper into a level of friendship with somebody. So
Yeah.
here's what this is just the science, do with it what you will. They said for casual friends, usually about 50 hours of time around each other. And you have space for about 100 to 150 casual friends. So you got 1,500 friends on Facebook. Let's be honest, 10% of those are probably people that you really even have any kind of connection with at all.
Right.
Good friends, and I don't know what defines good friends, but they're saying 100 hours of bonding time. We have room for about 35 to 50 of those in our lives. Best friends would be 2 hours bonding time. 10 to 15, room for 10 to 15 of those in our lives. And then lastly, they say intimate friends, 200 plus hours of bonding time per friend. And we have room for about 5 of those. And I would say, from my experience, if you have 1 to 3 of those in your life, you are a rich man.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely believe that. I mean, and with guys, so we even in those hours together, right? Are we really talking about, who we are, what we're struggling with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even with really good friends, I mean, you and
Yeah.
I have to be somewhat, well, it's more natural now, but we'd have our banter and then you kind of get into it.
Yeah.
It
You got
was
to
it
be
was a
intentional
conscious,
about it.
yeah, it was a conscious decision to go to that space, because when you're witty or you have endless Instagram reels that are fun, yeah, whatever, you can talk about, you can just waste time, right?
Yeah.
And that
Yeah, I
kind of
think
brings,
guys can be, we can be Smarlax with each other and razz each other and trash talk and all of
endlessly.
that. Tell me about you. You shared that you had a situation at pickleball where you kind of put yourself out there, and tell us how that went.
Yeah. It's there. I think just like our segue into the bit, maybe guys aren't the best at. I don't know if it's we're not receptive to the moment, right? Or we don't know how to transition, so it can be awkward. But yeah, I played pickleball with a bunch of guys Tuesday nights for about 3 hours, right? It's not an hour, and there's usually beer and whatever, having a great time. And at the end, well, I think one of the issues I had was I wasn't getting to know the guys, right? I felt like every week I was showing up, but I didn't know them anymore, and it was irritating me. Like, how do I don't even know anything about their wife or anything. So there was something personally that was irritating me, and these two guys, we had begun kind of touching on some personal conversation before, so I brought it up, and a couple other guys that were listening are like, whoa, is this like therapy or youth group? Like, can we like, and it was which made it more, we kept talking about it, it was fine. But
Mm-hmm.
in that moment, you're like, yeah, that's how it is for guys, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, can we not do that? And I
Yeah.
think it's not so much, well, there are a lot of issues, but like, what's the point? I think a lot of those guys say, what's the point, right? We're hanging out. Life sucks. My marriage isn't the best. I'm frustrated with my kids. I'm tired. Well, why do we need to talk about it? Right? Like, what are you going to fix it? Right? Because that's what we
Mm-hmm.
do. We fix. So our friendships are having a beer, talking about surface stuff. And that's like enough of a temporary patch, but we don't really want to get into it, maybe because we don't really know what's the outcome. How's this really going to serve me in the long run? But that was a funny moment.
I think you're right, though. I think a lot of it's fear of we're not going to be able to fix it. It's just going to make me feel even worse talking about it.
Right.
Fear of judgment, fear of I'm alone in this, fear of everybody else has got it figured out and they're doing fine, but I'm not. And I think that keeps us from a lot of things that could be helpful.
Yeah.
We talk about our values. Maybe that'd be a good
Yeah.
way segue for us there, is that this known experience requires some things. And one thing is it requires courage. And courage is not a lack of fear. It's just the willingness in the midst of fear to lean into it and to put yourself out there. Another one is humility. I think it takes humility to have courage, because humility is this willingness to fail, this willingness to not look great, or to just be willing to be esteemed as we are, not as we hope everybody else thinks we are.
Yeah.
Vulnerability, curiosity, consistency, commitment, creativity, and honesty. Those are our values, and that may be too many. We may need to narrow it down later, but those are things for now that we feel like are really important to this known experience. Sean, what of those stand out to you, or do you want to open up a little bit more?
Well, I think it's one of the I really, as I said in the beginning of the podcast, I like executing, right? But and I think maybe a lot of guys do. We have a goal, we achieve it, but are we showing up well each time, right? So commitment and consistency are really important to me, right? So just being committed to something, being committed to your wife isn't just good enough, right? Not just cheating on her doesn't create a good marriage, right? Consistently being a good dad, a loving husband, being a consistent partner is just as important, if not more important, than being a committed partner, right? Or going to the gym. We had talked about this before. You can go to the gym every day, but if you just sit on the machine and talk to Bob, your body's not going to change much, right? So consistently working hard to achieve a goal is so critical. So those for me, none of the creativity, honesty, vulnerability all follow the commitment and the consistency in the pursuit of those, right? And so those are kind of foundational for all the other values for me.
Yeah, for me too. I mean, I think you're someone who's more naturally consistent and committed than I am. Like whether it be working out, or I just see it in the way that you consistently spend quality time with your kids and your family. I'm super ADD. I'm not great with consistency. And so I have to be really intentional about building these things into my life. They have to be on my calendar. There has to be an accountability to them. So for me, my commitments to the known experience this coming year have been kind of on a psychological level, a friendship level, and then a body and mind health level. And so I've committed to seeing my therapist twice a month. And that's like a time and a financial investment that I'm committed to and to be consistent with. On a weekly basis, I'm committed to spending quality time once a week with a male friend that's intentional. And, like we said, there's not a ton of space in our life for those kinds of friendships. So there's just a few people on that list, but I want to be consistent in investing in our friendship. And then on the body side of things, the health side of things, I'm trying to exercise, get active in some way. Maybe it's pickleball, tennis, gym, riding my bike, 3 or 4 times a week. Just transparency. I have failed miserably on the last one. It's sleeting right now. There's about a half an inch of ice on the ground.
Ooh, so good.
There's always yoga at home, which I need to check into. But yeah, so those are my investments in this. What's it look like for you on a regular basis? Or is that something for you that's kind of more fluid because it's just become a part of your life now?
Yeah, no, it is. It is fluid. I have I'm in a season of life where it's very, I've never had more time, right now. Well, past 2.5 years. But that has lent itself to, a much deeper dive into kind of identity and self-worth, which are things, I think that's the knowing yourself. I considered myself to be very like clear. 2 years ago, if you said, do you know yourself? I'd be like, yes, yeah, I'm good. Right. Like the work's been done. It's on autopilot, not the case, So I think like that committed, like I'm really committed to, as I'm transitioning into this new stage of, I'm self-employed, entrepreneur. So there's been a lot of things that have fallen through. I mean, whew, the pursuit of finding my worth again in my creation, and that daring entrepreneur doing blazing trail, that everyone admires. But I'm kind of coming through the like really being committed to being honest with myself about how insecure I actually am in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I think there's so many fears that we wrestle with as men, and one of them is that if we're vulnerable or if we go down this path, that people aren't going to like us. They're not going to like the front that we put up, the deflecting, all that we do is an attempt to get people to like us. Brennan Manning talks about imposter syndrome, and I hope we'll probably do a whole episode on imposter syndrome. But one thing he says is that the interesting thing about the imposter, which the imposter is the version of us that we put out there that we think other people want in order to accept us and love us. The imposter is a fictitious character, and fictitious characters cannot experience intimacy. And so the very thing that we're doing prevents us from getting the very thing that we really want.
Sure.
And the other irrational fear is that if we're honest, if we own our stuff, if we admit our faults and mistakes, or if we talk about them, that people are going to judge us and not accept us. And my experience has been just the opposite, that when I'm vulnerable, when I own my stuff, they already knew it. Like it's not a shock to them. They're like, oh, I'm glad that you're self-aware. And then they're also grateful that we're being open, and it tends to lead towards them being open. And it really tends to endear people to us rather than turn them away from us. Has that been your experience?
Yeah. At least the right people, right? Sure, some people just want you to be a caricature of a leader, or or they'll be disappointed, but they're that's their issue. But no, you are right.
It kind of goes back to the old Dr. Seuss quote of those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind.
Right.
Right. The people that we're losing by being our authentic selves, we didn't have them to start with, and the people that do care about it, we're just going to grow closer to them. Anyways. But we are, just to wrap things up, we are looking at having a bunch of different folks on this podcast as guests. Our first is going to be Dr. Rob Murray, talking about leading with heart and soul, and how do we do that? What's that look like? How do we get there? But we're also going to have on some athletes, some folks in the entertainment industry, some names that you know, some names that you don't know. But they're people that have rich experience and ideas that I think are really going to resonate with you. We're going to talk to therapists. We're going to talk about how our body helps inform us about who we are and how we are, and faith leaders, all kinds of folks. So I hope that you will hang with us and maybe, commit yourself to 3 or 4 episodes of this to see what you can get out of it, that commitment and consistency, to see how it might help you grow.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, guys. This has been a quick peek into who we are and why we're doing it. And we look forward to hearing from some of you along the journey. So this has been the Known Experience Podcast. This is Sean for John. Thank you so much. And we look forward to the next one.